Okay. Hopefully we don't have the technical difficulties this time as we did the last time. Welcome back to Surviving to Thriving for Highly Sensitive People. And I am Tammy Goen, your host and guide, high sensitivity coach. And if you've been following me, you would know that I probably really would prefer to be able to call my show Highly Sensing for the highly sensing, but in our culture, it is becoming more and more recognized, but it's still seen as used that term high sensitivity. So that's usually what I use in terms of promo things. But I really do like that term highly sensing, just so it doesn't have that negative connotation, that kind of stigma that we have spent our whole lives dealing with, whether we knew that there was a trait called high sensitivity or not. So welcome. We're going to be talking about all kinds of things pertinent to high sensitivity or highly sensing folks. Things to help you go from struggling and feeling overwhelmed and exhausted all the time, if that's you, or having relationship issues or whatever things are getting in the way as a result of that sensitivity or that ability to sense things deeply, and really be able to move beyond that struggle, barely surviving, to actually thriving and using all of the amazing benefits of sensitivity and processing things so deeply, because there really are a lot of those, but we can get mired in those things that are not working. So good to have you here as always. And this month we are talking about honoring yourself. And, you've always been highly sensitive. Maybe it's pretty recent that you've discovered that there's a trait of high sensitivity, and that's you, and that's a lot of other people, 20% of the population. So we have these tendencies as highly sensing people to compare ourselves with others, whether that's other highly sensitives or those who are not. Usually it's those who are not, because from our perspective, it seems that those who are not, and even sometimes those who are, just can kind of fly through life and things don't bother them and it's not a big deal and everything is just great, in their world, and they're not struggling with the same things that you are. And the reality is that's not always true anyway. We have to remember that, the grass is always greener, right? It's easy to assume all of those things, but everyone is dealing with stress reactions these days. Everyone has a lot of stuff on their plate. Life is busy, loud, chaotic. That's especially difficult for us sometimes. But there are effects on everyone these days. It's just that we as highly sensing people have a different, deeper experience of that. And I have a friend who tends to join me for this, this show, who frequently will say, a lot of the stuff that you talk about is pertinent for people who are not highly sensing. And that's totally true, because there's really not very much that I address, unless I'm talking about what it's like to be highly sensing, that isn't pertinent for everyone. I mean, everyone needs to have a good self-care practice. Everyone can work on their emotional, IQ, being able to manage their emotions, managing energy, because things can get really busy. It's just that those of us who are highly sensing, that we process everything to such a deeper level that all of these things are that much more important for us to be able to thrive, because of our nervous system, mostly because we are just constantly, taking that stuff in like sponges without those filters. And it's a lot more challenging for our nervous system to manage all of that. So it's that much more important to have all of those tools in place. So when we start talking about honoring yourself, what I really like to encourage you is to just have this open mind of, honoring yourself as a highly sensitive person or highly sensing person versus in spite of or outside of, like trying to, discount that or negate it. Without that, I'm a great person, or without that, I have all of these qualities. But really looking at that as in the big picture, and how you are an amazing person as a highly sensing person, and how that really contributes to what you share with the world and what your experience is, if you allow that to happen and you don't spend a lot of time thinking that you should be otherwise, that there's something that you can change and be different. So we really would, it's good to just honor who we are as highly sensing beings. And I'll reiterate from a previous episode, we are this way, we're wired this way, we're born this way for a reason. We're the canaries in the coal mine. We're, in terms of generational perspectives and evolutionary perspectives, this trait has persisted because it serves a purpose. And really that purpose is not only to help us in some ways to have a greater appreciation of life in general, and these amazing rich experiences that we love, but we can also provide so much to the world through our compassion and our intuition and our ability to see things from different perspectives and all sides, and that idea of equality and just seeing things from other people's perspectives, putting your foot in someone else's shoe, as they say, whatever. So those things they're there for a reason, and we're supposed to be this way. So that can really be a struggle. But if we honor the fact that, yeah, I'm a highly sensing person, I'm that way for a reason, and look at all these amazing things I offer the world, and have that perspective versus seeing, as like, I need to change myself so that I can fit into this non-highly sensing world. So hopefully you can start to cultivate that idea of, I'm going to honor myself for who I am and not change to fit in with the status quo or what's expected, in the general population. So let's look at that idea of not being less than, and others aren't more than, because they can handle things that we can't. So yes, we do tend to get worn out more easily. Things affect us more. There are things that will bother us, distract us, things that other people just let go, they don't notice. And sometimes we need some certain types of support, things like, an environment at work that allows for decreasing all of those inputs, the noise and the lights and things like that. So those kinds of things can really help us to thrive. And when we have the right circumstances and the right environment and conditions, we do thrive, and we can be really amazing, whether it's in our work environment or in our social situations, in our families. As long as we have what we need, we offer so much to the world. So letting go of that idea that you're not, as good as, or not enough of something like that compared to someone else that you see over here is like, oh, they can go through an entire day, finish up what they're doing, and then still have plenty of exercise or energy left to, go out and have dinner and drinks and, watch a movie or whatever. And maybe you're sitting back going, it's been a long day, I need to just go home and rest. So honoring that that's because of the way you're wired, not because you're less than, and not because you're lacking in anything at all. It's just that your nervous system needs a little extra care and can get worn out and not be able to take in all of that information that everyone else does. But it's definitely not a bad thing. It's not wrong. And it may seem like everyone else that doesn't experience things that way has it easier, but they've got their own stuff too. And things will catch up to them really quickly if they're not taking care of themselves. Just usually is more quickly for us. And if we take those steps to manage that, even if it's different than what other people are doing, that benefits us and everyone else eventually. So one of the things that's really important to identify, to know, be aware of, is what your needs are as a highly sensing person. And so, you can do this right now as I'm talking, as you're listening. I always do things old school, so I would get a piece of paper and a pen, but you can do this on your, phone or laptop or whatever. But, you can create a list of all of the things that you think are important for you to thrive, that give you a feeling of support, whether it's being heard and, listened to, whether it's having the things in your environment that help you, being able to talk with someone so that they understand where you're coming from. So when you have those interactions, they're not so much of a struggle. Whatever it is that supports you, that you need to really thrive. So start a list that way. If you're not doing it right now, do that, after you've watched this. Create that list so that you can be very clear. Because if it's just kind of running around, if you're like, oh yeah, I need extra stuff, and I don't like to think about that because that, everyone else manages without all that. But spend some time, focus on that. What do you really need to manage so that things aren't quite as challenging? So that might be, daily meditation, something I always recommend. Some kind of quiet, meditative, mindful practice, breath work, yoga, something that you can have every single day. That's probably going to be on your list because those things calm your nervous system. So you'll need things for calming that nervous system and for general self-care, whether that's going within and being quiet, like meditation, or some kind of exercise, or being out in nature. Identify what all of those things are that you need for your nervous system as a highly sensing person. And then practice reviewing those and trying to not have any judgment about them. Just acknowledge, oh, yeah, that's what I need because I'm wired this way. It's not unreasonable, and it's not a bad thing, but being aware of what it is can then help you get those needs fulfilled. And so once you are very clear what those needs are, and then you've spent some time focusing on making sure that that's okay, and that you're not judging that as not okay and thinking that you need to change that, or, oh, if only, everything would be fine if I could just not have such a, temperamental nervous system or whatever. Well, that's the way you're wired. And because of that, you have all these other amazing benefits to offer. But first we have to be aware of what we need, honor that, and then take those steps to get those needs met. Because if you're always doing for others and you're always considering what everyone else is doing and what the effect is going to be on them, and et cetera, then you're not really taking care of your needs. And then eventually you are going to crash and burn. You are going to get, overwhelmed by the end of the day. You're not going to have the energy to do all those things that you really want to do, whether as a parent or a friend or a partner or an employee or a business owner. You're going to run out of steam if you don't have those things to take care of yourself. So identify what that stuff is that's important for you, honor it, say, yep, it's okay that I have this, and then take those steps. And maybe you're not doing much of that right now at all. Maybe you create this list and go, yeah, well, let's see. I do sometimes get out for a 15-minute walk during, lunch hour or something. That's pretty much all I'm doing for myself right now. Then you can kind of get to see how, by not honoring yourself and where you are and what your needs are, you end up in this place of, just barely treading water and feeling like you're about to drown all the time because you just don't have that bandwidth and you don't have the helpful, appropriate expectations for yourself. So being able to, be really, really truthful, really honest with yourself about that. Am I taking care of my needs in the way that I can? And what can I step out and ask for in my needs from somebody else? So that's really important, is letting others know what it is that helps you to thrive. And you can present it that way. You don't say, you have to say that, you're struggling and you need all this extra support. You can just say, hey, for the way I'm wired with my nervous system, these are the things that really help me thrive. And just ask for those things, knowing that that will help you. And that people, for the most part, are usually wanting to support if they have a direction. A lot of times they're just going to go along their lives as they're used to, not thinking that you would have any other different needs, right? Sometimes we look at others and go, how can they do that? And they're not going to do the flip side. They're not going to say, oh, this person, is maybe going to struggle with this because they don't have the same nervous system. They're not going to be aware of that. So letting them know, hey, because of the way I process things, this would really help me to thrive, and just present those ideas. And then here's another thought. If we look at language, and we can look at it from an energetic perspective, everything is energy and our words are energy. And of course, if we're trying to have more energy in our world because our nervous system is challenged, we want to have higher vibration experiences, energies, emotions, and thoughts. And so let's look at thoughts that sometimes can be really heavy and draining on us. And that's using things like that we've heard, for our entire lives as highly sensing people, that we are to this, we are over that, we are so, this in terms of like, it's not okay, just need to, let something go, et cetera, et cetera. So those words have a heaviness And they suggest that it's not okay and you need to be different, right? So if we can identify all those, and that's another tool you could do too, just write a little list of all the things that you are told or that you believe because of what you've been told all this time, or that you've just kind of learned as a highly sensing person. Oh, I'm way over the top on, this, and I'm too sensitive this time, and et cetera, et cetera. So write all those little statements down, because they're important. They're in there, and they're probably at an unconscious level. Some of them will be conscious, but we kind of operate under those. If we're not aware of what they are, we can't change them. So be aware of that. Create that list if you want, so that you can recognize, oh yeah, these are the things that I'm actually telling myself that are not helpful. Like, I'm to this and I shouldn't do this, and I'm not that, and I'm over the top on this. And then see what you can do to shift these words. So just find a little simple replacement. Like, you can use things like very, instead of saying I'm too sensitive, you can say, oh, I'm very sensitive to these kinds of things. And this is the way that can help me. You can use that when you're talking with other people. But exceptionally, surprisingly, you can use those kinds of terms. Wonderfully, amazingly, those kinds of terms can be used instead of too or over or not enough or whatever that's, that negative connotation, that judgment, and say, wow, yes, I am very sensitive, and I have this innate, sensing ability, this deep processing ability, and that's amazing. And this is how. So see if you can get used to that idea of just shifting those words, those terms, and catch yourself as you start to write that list. Catch yourself on all those things that you've not realized, like, oh, I do tell myself that. And maybe you have somebody's voice in your mind. It's like, oh yeah, mom used to say this, or my brother used to say that, or I had this friend that was constantly telling me this. And now you realize, like, I've kind of taken that to heart, right? I've owned that as true. And now I repeat that to myself all the time, or I have that belief that I operate under. So being able to shift that, be really aware, and then shift it to all of those positive things. How can you reframe those so that you can feel amazing in your sensitivity, in your ability to process things so deeply? And then by honoring that, you can move forward to thrive and use that, all of those benefits, those parts of the trait that are so amazing, when we're not bogged down by, trying to change or just being overwhelmed. So what I'd like to do is just take you through a real brief meditation that can help with this. So if you are available or able, wherever you are, to just kind of go within, get quiet, deep breathing, get all centered. If not, watch later so that you can do it when you're not going to be distracted. And as always, if you like to close your eyes, you can do that. If that's not comfortable, just kind of stare out in front of you, down a little ways. Just kind of soften your gaze and just spend a little time focusing on your breathing. Let that breath deepen. And with each exhale, imagine all things that are blocking you, everything that's not in your best interest is being released with each out breath. And you're bringing in love and light into your heart center. And that exhale, releasing what doesn't serve you. Maintaining a nice, slow, steady breath. A little bit longer on the exhale if you can. And now pay attention to that energy and air and love and light coming into your heart center. You can put your hand there on your chest if you'd like, to really focus on that center. And really pay attention to how that feels as you allow it to come into your heart space, and then allow it to radiate out through your whole body. That love and light, supportive energy radiating through to every cell in your body. Breathing slowly and deeply. Anytime your mind starts to wander, and it will, just come back, pay attention to your hand on your heart, pay attention to your heart center, to your air coming in, to that breath. Just focus on that breath. Be back in the present moment. And now from that heart space, see a radiant golden light emanating from that heart area, out from your heart, out of your body, all around you, the front, the back, the sides, top and bottom, not just in the front, from everywhere around, from that heart space, radiating outward. And see that light just start to sparkle and shimmer. This is your essence, your loving light and energy coming from that place in the heart center, feeling it radiating out to the world. That sparkling, luminescent, vibrant golden light. See it expanding further outside your body now. Maybe it's a foot or two beyond your body, shimmering, glowing, this beautiful golden light. See it expand even farther now to take up the whole space that you're in right now. Keeping that breath slow and steady. Just allowing that expansive energy to grow even more. That luminescence is just expanding out of your heart, out into the world. See it shimmering. See how amazing that is. And now that expands further and further to encompass your whole community. Just see how amazing and intense that light is that you share with the world. Seeing that radiate out from you, from that central heart area, radiating out, spreading, sharing with the world. And you can see that continue to expand to your entire region, to your state, and your if you're in the States, in the region of the US, or wherever you are in the world, that greater area. And then the whole country, wherever you are, see that energy radiating out to the whole entire country. And then the entire hemisphere. And finally, see that light, that amazing, vibrant, shimmering gold light and energy radiating from you out to the entire planet. Maybe you can see the planet as a whole from afar, just glowing with this light. Maintaining that deep breathing. When your mind wanders, just come back. Focus on that breath. And notice if this shimmeringness of this golden light has a sensation that you can feel. What do you feel in your body as you're sharing this immense, beautiful light with the world? And then just be aware, something like, I am sharing my love and light with the world. It is shining from this heart center of mine that is connected deeply as a highly sensing person. It's very deep, and I have that to share with the world. Nice deep breath. And then go ahead and draw yourself back in, your focus. Your energy can remain out there, spreading that, sharing that with the world. But shift your focus back a little closer to your country, back to your state, back to your area. And then back to your room, wherever you started. Back into your body. Being aware of that feeling of what that sensation is of spreading, sharing that amazing light, knowing that it's still still going out there, you're sharing that with the world, but now your focus is within again. And just as a precaution, because we can be so giving, before we wrap up, just imagine that you have a little bit of a bubble surrounding you that allows all of that energy to continue to pour out to the world. But it's a very safe little bubble that prevents any unwanted energies from the world to come into your space and into your field. So just be aware of that. You can freely give all of that energy, but nothing unwanted, nothing that's not good for you is going to make it in as you pull back into that heart space. Only benevolent, supportive, loving light and energy is allowed into your space. And take a nice last super deep breath. And as you exhale, just be aware of where you are, wherever you're seated, making sure that you are aware of your body and the room that you're in, the space that you occupy, the seat that you're on, that you're feeling totally present back in the universe, or excuse me, back from the universe. We're all connected all the time, but back into this personal space right now so that we can carry on, move forward for the day. So feel free to use that anytime. Just imagine though that you have this amazing light to spread and share with the world that is different than some, thankfully, and similar to some of your highly sensing tribe. So just being aware of this, and again, looking at trying to not second guess and discount who and what you are and what you offer because you are highly sensing, but honor that and go forward knowing that you are amazing and perfect just as you are as a highly sensing being. Thank you so much, as always, for joining, and feel free to look at past episodes. I just love to be here to help as many highly sensitives as possible to go from that place of struggle and just barely surviving to thriving. And I hope to see you again next time, and have an amazing, amazing week.